All right, hello, my friends. Here we are, the graduate show. It's been a hard couple days for me. I'm just thankful to have this show, something to look forward to. To put it in perspective, my kid wasn't unhappy that I had to get up in the darkness today and decided to pour sand onto the strawberries that I prepared for the fool. Then, when I went to go eat my lunch, I said, oh, well, let's put those strawberries into my lunch. Well, of course, I'd forgotten that there was sand in the strawberries. So I had sand for lunch, my friends. Sand for lunch. Let me tell you. It's pretty rough. Okay, let's get into it. We got a great show today. And just 3 games. First, we're starting off with, let's start off with the scoreboard here. And we got Jovis, who has done some tactics and is in now the 800 to 900, but has gone up considerably. And I believe we're over here actually. I don't know how to pronounce Jovis's name. Sounds like a Greek god or something like that, but there they are, Jovis. Very good progress, basically 200 points. Why it doesn't show the rating increase, I don't know. Sometimes the scoreboard, I can't figure it out. As you can see, we don't have any games. That's why I'm not going to look at any of Jovis's games. I couldn't find any of them. But we have some tactics, and that is what got them to the 800, 900 spot. So, great progress. We'll see what's going on next in the life of Jovis. I will also make an announcement. We've got the famous Jack Stingline has been working behind the scenes to create the Dojo 2.0. And so a problem that we had with the scoreboard was we're just using a Google Doc, and then too many people, using the thing. The threat is that it'll eventually crash. So that was the main reason we had to create something new. And hopefully this thing is going to be really cool. All this functionality that we have now, plus more, and also more boomer friendly. So hopefully like one website to rule them all instead of like having to learn Discord and all this other stuff that drove the boomer GMs crazy. Okay, so next up, I'm going to start with this one. And we're going to start with Scott Johnson here, who is there as number 116. And Scott, this is a very interesting person for me. We're going to talk about a couple people today who have not played a lot of tournament chess yet, Scott being one of them. In fact, in the game that he shows us here, I think he says that it's their first over-the-board game, okay? Now, that being said, check it out with 3 points per box and going up 89 points. And soon in the region of being able to go up again, right, after this. Okay. In fact, yeah, so this is their old thing, right? And they're going to go up to 1,100, 1,200. It's very interesting, people who haven't played real games before. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it when we talk about my student Jamil, who also is going to be part of the graduate show today. Okay, what I want to say about 3 points per box is what I always say is that's when it's turning into a little bit of a grind, and that's a good thing. Again, the whole training program is designed to say, look, if you have reached a plateau, that if you do all of the things that we're saying, you will make it to the next level, right? And if we get down to like 1 point per box, that's really like what it would be, because the next level is generally going to be 100 points from wherever you were at, right? So 3 points per box shows me like we're getting close, and then the 1,100, 1,200 was going to be a really interesting thing for us to watch Scott Johnson progress. As I get older, I'm less interested in Magnus, and I'm more interested in watching the trajectories of these kinds of players and to see what kind of improvement they can earn. Okay, so let's move on to Scott's game. Pop, Rop, and Zop. This was my first rated over the game board game ever. Here we go. So I think that this is all, Scott's throwing around words like Slav and semi-Slav. My feeling is that mostly people are making up as they go along. Now, why is bishop g4 a little weird? It's a little weird because knight e5 would threaten the bishop, and you might say, Jesse, don't you always say, boss, that you cannot move a developed piece twice? Well, the thing with knight e5 is we would really be threatening to win a tempo by either e3 or e4 after we take. So black would presumably have to respond if they do something like this. Then I'm worried for their soul on either queen b3 or cd first and then queen b3, because the knight is well placed on e5 and the bishop on h5 isn't controlling these kinds of light squares in the backfield. Okay, but defaulted development, fine. Okay. Oh, I want to say a couple words about this. So white is concerned about bishop f3. And one of the just things we'll say is the computer will tell you not to be concerned because the computer loves the bishops, but also because the pawn on f3 will dominate the knight on f6. However, from a human perspective, we have to say, of course, I get it. I get it that you have a little bit of concern over here. I do too, because it's a long-term problem, especially for your king, right? Okay. Art Casperg, thank you for subscribing. Sometimes, by the way, I don't always look at chat because I'm looking at these games and then people yell at me and I'm like, boss, I'm trying to concentrate. Okay, here we go. Pop, bishop b2. I think probably best to just ask the bishop the question, right? C takes. During our post-mortem, my opponent suggested this was not particularly good as it opens the diagonal for his light square bishop. Okay, so indeed, and we should also say that even if black were to recapture with the c pawn, we can say, hey, isn't that cool that the knight gets to develop on c6? So either way, it's a bonus for black. I get it, though, why you probably felt the need to do so, namely, you felt tension here and you were worried maybe this pawn was going to go. So the move b3 is probably what we want. Now, notice what you're doing is you're, for the most part, just developing your stuff. You're defaulting to development. Fine, right? Fine. We do need to recognize, though, that this is your problem piece. And one thing I want you to see about this game, is you recognize in your notes anyway that the bishop on c1 is your worst piece. But I want you to see that what you kind of proceed to do is trade off all of the pieces that are not that piece, right? So let's be sensitive and say this is a poor piece on c1, and this piece on c3 is also problematic because it's dominated by this knight. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Notice also another way to think about it, if you just want to think about pawns, I don't like to think about just pawns, but if you just think about pawns, this pawn is better than either of those pawns, right? Okay, here we go. Pop, pop, knight e5. Important to see that we are exchanging our good bishop on e2 for their bad bishop. Our good bishop because our pawns are on dark squares, his bad bishop because his pawns are on light squares. And now their worst piece on b8 gets to come in, and we have to figure something out about this knight. Not so simple, right? And when you take bishop d2, I love this note, by the way. Let's read this note. During our postmortem, my opponent suggested that this capture benefited black. He did not like my knight on its outpost at e5. He would capture on e5, but thought it would be difficult to solidify his position there. Now, the key thing I want you to see is that you took because you were worried about, again, doubling the pawns. But the thing that I hope your opponent said in the postmortem is, oh, when you take, I develop my queen, right? Now, maybe it's a little funkadelic when you take, and it might get complicated like this. Honestly, to me, a very hard position to evaluate. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, right? I'm sure black has to be fine, but still an interesting position. But the main thing to weigh it against is just the fact of the easy development that you're giving black when we do this. Okay, you know I don't like that move, and you know I wanted bishop d2. Okay, we all know this. We all know what Kraai wants. Good move. Good move. And now, really, you need a plan, right? You need a plan in this position. And let's say that a word, more important than any kind of opening stuff, is the word you should know to use here is you should say to yourself, right, this is a Carlsbad position. Carlsbad is just this pawn structure versus this one, okay? And there are basically 3 plans for white in this position. One is to organize b4, b5. That's called the minority attack. And the other 2 involve somehow using this f-pawn. For example, if the knight were on e5, we could maybe think about the f4 plan. We saw that earlier, but that's not happening anymore. Excuse me. Then also maybe f3, that's the other plan, but you can see also now that's also a little hard to imagine, especially because this square is a little weak, right? So rook ae1 is I think you should have said something here. You should have been like, well, my intention was so-and-so. The big move, if I can say something like that, is to play rook b1, intending b4 and b5. And black is better, right? Because your knight on c3 is poor and your bishop on d2 is poor. But you do have a plan when you play rook b1, b4. I'm not really sure what this plan is. Okay, pop, not really sure about that. And now black did a good thing because now you have to make a call about what you want to do. Okay, and whether you play g3 or f4, it's important to see that both moves put a pawn on a dark square, which further inhibits this bishop. So the main thing I want you to see about this position is that it's not just that your king is a problem, but that your minors are a problem. And the fact that the minors are poor makes the king's position even worse. Now, we're talking about the king's position. A position like this, it's sad to move the lady away, right? So it would be good, if we could, to find some way to keep her close. Maybe queen f3 and g3. It's sad. It's definitely sad though at this point. At this point, we are assuming the position. Okay, knight e4, a natural move, but why is it controversial? Because that knight is trading itself off for the stinker on c3, right? So I think as a default move, black should consider rook e7. Now, this position, by the way, not super easy for black to crack you, right? So, you know, black's definitely better, but there's still some work to do. And from my sensibility, one of the interesting things is if he's going to come at you at some point later c5, even if knight e4, we're still going to have to someday play c5. And then this knight will have some juice, right? It's not completely dead anymore. Okay, so here we go. Rook f3. Now this is definitely a weird move. Now what I want you to see is the whole time, it's actually a really interesting blind spot that you later note, is the whole time you're not thinking about, hey, maybe I should be messing with them over here, right? So like queen b3, it's a little bit unpleasant. For black, you know, I believe in black's position and all that, but it's a little bit unpleasant for the dude here to know exactly how to respond. So definitely queen b3. And what I want you to see about rook f3 is, if you have a metaphor of a tennis player, I wasn't a good tennis player, but I like this metaphor, is it really with a rook lift, you're kind of you're trying to play at the net, right? Instead of playing from the baseline. And your pieces are going to get discoordinated now with the rook going over here to g3. All right, natural move. Again, kind of funky. And now black is, I think, getting a little, well, there's no need for rook a6, and it suggests the wrong intention. Namely, it suggests that black really wants to play rook g6, but then on queen g4, you have queen c8. So already rook ae6 looks like the wrong intention for black. Now again, it's not super simple to know what to do as black. Personally, I think this is going nowhere, so that we should organize c5, either right now or first b6 and c5. And black should be able to crack in the center, especially because this rook is funkily placed. But it's still, there's drama. There's no doubt about it. There's some drama ahead of us. And black can always play g6 if they need to. In any case, this was weird. Queen g4 right now, I guess, forces g6, because rook g6, queen c8. In which case, if you're going to play g6, there's no point to play rook e6. Weird, right? And then now g6, but now you miss your big chance. And the amazing thing about this is you're playing somebody who is substantially higher rated than you, and you had a chance to, honestly, I think, well, have a very nice position. Very nice position. Because this was a key pawn that you win over here. It's a very key pawn. And you're maybe someday going to play this. If ever c5 comes, they've got to worry about that business. Excuse me, no drunken bishops today, Kraai. Like that, if they play c5. If they don't play c5, I don't know how they try to crack you, right? So here I feel like you would be, much better. Now, let me say something, right? At the moment, you are in the 1100 to 1200 cohort. You've advanced to there. But it was ultimately in this game 2 tactical mistakes which could have decided the game. So this was number 1. And then this horrendo right there. Oh, and obviously, I don't need to beat you up about it, Scott. I don't need to do it, boss. I'm sure you've already done it for yourself. Yeah. So, and there it is. And black finished you off here. Okay, it's not only, f5 is weird too, in that not only have we done this, but we're also allowing this one, right? Okay. So, Scott has his works cut out for him, but I think, let me just stress again, there's a lot of positional things that are interesting to say about this game, but ultimately it was the tactical missteps that doomed both players, right, in this game. Okay, let's go to Fesklo. Probably saying that one incorrect. Let's go to Fesklo, and I'll just say Fesklo has graduated several times already. Began in 12 to 13, went to 13-14, and is now in 14-15. So that's pretty amazing. Fesklo is a minor criminal. He's a minor criminal in the dojo because he used to put a bunch of games up on the database, but now has been putting them up on Lichess. Shame! And what did I do? I stalked him. And I found this game on Lichess. Okay, so here we go. But he's doing the annotations there, so the annotations are getting done. This Bishop e7 has always been a really weird thing to me. It came out in the early 2000s, and I was always, as a French player, I was like, what, boss? What are you doing? Okay, so a highfalutin move from Fesklo here. Very highfalutin. And to my mind, the simple answer to this move is just to go into this nice setup. Easy setup for white. white's, I think, a little bit better. It's also a very dangerous position for black. In any case, this is the way it goes down. And Feskslow likes to see rather CD and then DE94. Now, one thing I'll say about this is, what are we going to say? It's an interesting isolated queen pawn position, whereas the one you get after E5 is going to be a very typical French position, right? So you are getting the type of game that you want here. And I assume that when you prepared this weird variation of bishop E7, that you had seen variations like this, right? So, for example, let's see here. Actually, yeah, I guess if you're playing C5 and they go, yeah, so all right. This is fine, though. There's nothing wrong with this. Now, B6, I feel, is a little weird. Can't be horrendous, but I do feel it's a little weird. By the way, as just for the white player, I like knight F3 a lot. And a very interesting thing that might really hurt black is queen G4. So queen G4 is the most ambitious. In any case, let's look at it from black's perspective. And B6 is kind of like a dream of a lot of French players, but the problem is that the knight on A6, you're right, black's intending to get this beautiful trade-off. The knight on A6 is going to be poor. Okay, pop, 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 pop. And then Feskslow says it's equal. I'd rather be white. I'd rather be white. Now, it is an interesting question. What should white play here? And there's a couple. I'm going to say knight F3 cannot be wrong. That's what white plays. But also interesting is like the move A3. I know that looks weird, but the intention is with B4 to shut down the play on the queen side and to grab the space over there. B4, black gets an initiative on black side of the board. Okay, so I can't, but in any case, I can't believe knight F3 is wrong. Castle's fine. And now rook E1. Now, it's an interesting question. So, to my mind, the real problem here is, can black fix this knight? And while he's fixing the knight, can white get some kind of juice over on the king side? And the real question is, how? How would white do it? Not so easy. I definitely didn't like the way white played it. So let's just go a couple moves and show what happened. So rook E1 and then knight G3. I don't understand what the knight's doing there. I really don't. So this would be an interesting moment to spend from the white perspective to just be like, well, boss, what should I have done? You know? And it's not super easy. In particular, because white wants to land on this square, and it's not super simple to know how to do it. For example, on H4, I believe black will take. And I believe we don't have enough. But there too, it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting sacrifice. So that's some GM would play H4 in that position, intending bishop G5. In any case, let's look at it from black's point of view. Rook E1, knight C7. I'm not thrilled, and let me read what you said about knight B8, which I think is the class move. Knight might be well placed on C6, but if white wanted to, he could just clamp down on the D4 pawn, and I would not be achieving much. Also, this temporarily disrupts my back rank, so I would need to spend another tempo to sort it out. Okay, so the reason I like the idea of knight b8 to c6 is that it's active, and on c7 it's not active. I don't know where it's going. It also gets in the way of everybody on c7. So there's a couple different ways of playing this position. One question for me would be, well, boss, can I do this with the intention of making white worry about knight b4? Now, there is a question mark here about this, because on queen a4, maybe I'm losing a pawn. But probably, okay, probably I'm getting good compensation if they take. Now, am I 100% on this? No, not 100%. But that would be something to look at, right? Something like this. It's a little bit messy. Okay, and I'm not sure. I'm just saying that would be the thing that I would want to look at, is rook c8. And if that didn't work, then your knight b8 move looks fine. One thing that's really interesting about the white position, one of the reasons I was kind of mentally trying to process what white should do, is it's important for white to understand that you did achieve an important exchange with the bishop. And they have in their hand a little bit of time, right? They have a little bit of time to create some kind of drama, right? And if they do not, on the king side, it's got to be on the king side, then, or this clamp on the queen side first, forget about it. You black will be better. Okay, so here we go. Knight g3, I didn't understand. b5, interesting. Queen d2, I don't like it. I don't get it. Rook c8. I was going to say, I do get it, but I don't have sympathy, in particular because I don't know why we did this move. What does queen d2 have to do with that move? Okay, queen d2, rook c8. Let me just mention, the knight is in the way of everybody, as we said before, right? I think the knight wants to go to b5. In which case, if we're going to play for b4, we should either do it now or play a5 first, right? So maybe our rook will be doing something on a8. So I'm not sure about rook c8. And then I'm definitely not sure about this thing. Now, I think what's happening with bishop takes g5 is you are saying something like, well, I want to go to this endgame and yada yada, right? And I'm sure your position is fine after said yada yada. But is the knight really killing us on g5? It's not clear. It's not clear. So I would still say to ourselves, unless they're threatening something, let's play b4 or a5 or get this party started, right? Okay, so now we go to this endgame. And maybe here you realize or began to feel the problem where bishop e7 might hurt you. Okay. And we should mention that I feel both players should now, when they look at this game, say to themselves, oh, this knight was bad and I didn't really appreciate it, and then this knight was bad and white didn't appreciate it, okay? One of the things that's interesting when I go through games of this level is how many moves did it take for them to figure out that the knight was poor, right? And white is going to spend ages figuring it out. Okay, so several moves here. I believe black is fine. You could play rook fe8. And we actually saw in the last game there was some tension on the pawn on c4 versus d5. In a similar way here, we're in no rush to take, right? So you could do this move, like you said in your notes. That move makes a lot of sense to me. That way our king can get out if we need to. And I still like the black position. It's a little hectic still, but I definitely like the position. I assume they're going to take. We'll bring the king to f7. We should be doing fine. Okay, so here we go. Pop, pop, and then again, with this move, we're letting this bishop on g5 in. Okay, so if bishop e7 weren't a good move, then definitely b3 would be a good move, just killing all of this knight's dreams, right? So we should say f6 is interesting here, and also knight b8 is interesting, and if we really, really had to, we could play rook fe8. But this is being not aware of the knight potentially becoming terrible. Okay, bishop e7 gets an exclam. It probably is worth it. Now it's going to get a little bit tactical. So a lot of lazy players could play b3, could have played b3 instead of bishop e7, right? But this move is arguably much better because that if the natural knight c4, they're saying pop, and we're dealing with b3, and when this bad boy lands here, there's this problem, and it's like, oh no, things have really gone awry. Okay. So it seems true. We definitely don't like the looks of knight a8, right? But let me say that we shouldn't think we're toast, because the problem that white has is this knight is horrendous, just horrendous, right? So we're not going to lose if they're basically down a piece. So if we go back and we think about it, and we imagine knight a6, pop, 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 and I don't know, I'm just going to put the knight on b8. How bad is it really? And again, the knight on g3, no one knows what it's doing. And we're about to bring the king over and such, right? Hard to evaluate. Hard to evaluate. Okay. So, I'm not sure about bishop e7, maybe. Definitely, though, b3 looks like an advantage for white. Bishop e7 is tactical. That looks wrong. Knight e8. So now, one of the things I want to yell at you about, if I'm allowed to, is that you allow a lot of your pieces here to become passive, right? White, in his turn, isn't going to figure out that the knight on g3 needs help. Okay, so let's back this up a second here too. A good default move here for white would always be b3. This one I'm not 100% on. And this one, I definitely don't want you to go passive here. Now, maybe you have no choice, but let's look at this variation. Knight a4, bishop a7, knight b2, and I think you're okay. I think you're okay, because there's no rook b1 ever because of the dreaded rook c2. And you can't be worse because this knight is terrible. Yes, this is awful too, but it's at least preventing some stuff. Nose Knows All says, wasn't knight h5 always a great move for white? We can look. b4, knight g5. When you say going straight to the throat, I don't know what white's next move is after that. You know? I don't know what the one after that is. So I would assume, let's just say I play a5. I still need a move. I don't know what it is. Right? Yeah. Now, by the way, I didn't answer the question. I didn't answer the question. Well, Kraai, what do you think white should have done here? And it's a fair question. So let's say there's still the a3 move, intending b4 with the clamp. That's a good standard plan. g3, h4 feels slow to me and a little cumbersome, but that's always a thought, right? And then there's the direct h4. It's a hard decision for white. I believe in white because this knight has to get fixed, but it's a hard decision for white. Not 100% a rook e1 yet, you know. And then another plan, if you wanted to do the knight g5 thing, would be to do this kind of business, and then bishop g5. And again, try to bring the lady over, right? Bring the lady to the strong side. Okay. So several plans there for white that I like a little bit better. All right, so here we are. Let me flip this. So rook b8, you should yell at yourself. No, don't go passive, mouse. Don't go passive. b3. Now, it's important to see that we're really in a bit of trouble now. Okay. Now, I want to stress something. The guy here has to fix the knight. Okay. Must fix the knight. And it's just a hallmark of these kinds of games that anyone can learn from, just to realize, like, oh, they're not fixing their bad piece. Right? They're not doing it. Now, what should they do? That's another question, right? It's an interesting question, like, well, how do they fix it? A default plan, though, could be knight e2 with two ideas. If you ever take on c5, I get d4, and if we do nothing, which is more probably the case, we'll get knight f4, touching this with thoughts of knight d3, and then in. But this knight must get fixed. There's no way black is going to lose without that knight being part of the plan. Don't like it either. You're not fixing the knight. Okay, so here we go. Pop, pop, pop. Bishop c5. Knight d7. b4. Horrendo. Why is b4 horrendo? Because you can't be putting the pawns on the dark squares. Can't do it. And here you missed a nice chance to, I would assume, be better, which is, let's bring the knight in. Let's say it. This bishop went from pretty strong to just loserdom here. With the b4 boss, don't put your pawns on the same color as the bishop. And yeah, knight b6, knight c4, we should be doing great. All right, f6. Horrendous move. Horrendous. He's activating your stuff. Thank you very much. No way should white ever take there. Rook e1. All right, now things are going to get interesting, right? King f7, f5, and now a crime against humanity. Knight c5. Now you give a variation with ef5, but I think it makes a lot of sense just to play rook e8, right? And why are you better? Because your king is better, because your knights are better. Very annoying for your knights to be messing with him. And the knight on g3, no one knows. No one knows what it's doing, right? Okay, so mistake, and this kind of allows, well, not kind of, it allows white to get kind of paid for his b4 mistake, right? Like he killed his own bishop and then you took the thing, and now both bc and dc look interesting for him. I think he should be proud of the move dc. Now, I want to stress, I still don't know if you're worse here, okay? But it scares me. The reason we would say maybe you're not worse is simply because the knight is still hasn't fixed itself and your king is a little bit better than their king. Now, was that necessary though? No. Why just helping you develop? Okay. Passive. Thank you very much. All right. Good move, I think. At least it's natural. h3, horrendous. Horrendo. Now, the position, of course, is still very hot. And maybe rook e3 is incorrect because we are enabling knight f5, right? Is it a hot position, though? Yes, it's scaring me. By the way, a more natural move than rook d1 would be rook c1, just to make black think about it, right? Okay. And then, here we go. Pop, horrendo, boom, game over. Let's read the final thoughts. I think this was a decent game for me, avoiding the big blunders. 2 key possibilities for improvement, I think. Choose a better line in the opening. I thought your opening was fine. Um, don't trade down to bishop versus knight endgame and then like, why get a superb bishop? But remember, he killed his bishop later. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm just reading some of the chat. Okay, let's go look at Fesclow's amazing progress here. We switch scenes. Sometimes I don't always remember to switch scenes, and people yell at me. Understandably, I get it. Boomer GM that I am. Fesclow. It's very hard to pronounce. And yeah, so right, began in 1200, 1300, right? And then went to 1314. And let's look at how they did it in 1314. 3 points per box. As we know, that's my sign that we've been on a very good grind at 3 points per box. 21 games, 12 submitted. He stopped submitting to the database, and I hunted him down on Lichess. Done some of the mated twos, done loads of this tactical stuff. End games, thank you very much. And then some work over here. Great. So, Fesclow, very active in the dojo. I think dude's going to make it. It'll be a really interesting cohort now. We get up to 1400, 1500. Gets a little bit more competitive every time we go up. And sometimes I don't appreciate it myself too much, but, by the time you get to 1400, 1500, which, we're getting up into let's just look at it. To graduate from 1415, you got to have 1750 chess.com. So you're well into the 90s in the percentiles, well into it. I think you're already 98, 99 at that point, right? So we're dealing in already a kind of high proportion crowd, even though a lot of times they don't realize how high they are in relation to the rest of the field. Like if you were to see somebody in the 98th percentile in a gym, they would just be ripped, dude. They would just be ripped, and you'd be like, damn, what's going on with that dude? Right? If you saw Fesclow in a gym with a rating of 1950, oh man. Or this is Jamil at 19, who's now at 1950, you'd be like, damn, dude, that's incredible. Okay, next up we have Ryan Berg, and I am not sure what's going on with Ryan Berg. I think Ryan Berg, my guess is Ryan Berg is a boomer GM and has not figured out how to do the scoreboard or the Discord. I feel like if I was a member of the dojo and I wasn't one of the people involved in the running of the thing, I probably wouldn't have the time and patience to figure it out either. You can see here at my streaming skills. It would be too much for me, and I'd be like, just boss, I want to play some chess. In any case, Ryan has made the jump to 1700, 1800, and we're going to congratulate him. And one thing I want to stress again, I mentioned at the top of the show, is we are doing Dojo 2.0 coming up May 1st, and I'm hoping that the site will be more easily navigable than it is now, especially for us older dudes who the millennials call boomer GMs, even though we're not boomers, right? Okay, so by the way, one thing I wanted to mention too that I think is cool for anybody in the program is we have One Peel Sam, a friend of mine here from Baltimore, and she did a YouTube video of one of her games. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, of course, that is a totally cool way of doing the same thing that people do in a PGN, right? Because if you're annotating a game, doing a YouTube video about it, you kind of have to pull your thoughts together, speak as clearly as possible. What are your evaluations? What did you think was going on? I think for a lot of people that's even easier. And I think for the chess fans, many of them will like it even more. They're like, okay, I can chill out and watch a YouTube video. So I wrote David and Kostya today, and I said, dudes, well, we should totally encourage this as a way to submit a PGN too. Obviously, it's cool to have something in the database, but the videos are a really great way of doing it as well. Just as good as far as I can tell. And there's no reason that you can't have both a PGN and a video. Okay, so now on to Jamil. I'm going to go on a good rant here, my friends. Let me just prepare my rant. Okay, so I've been teaching Jamil since before COVID happened, before the Dojo training program happened. Okay. It's been an experiment the whole while. Namely, what is it like in the life of a pandemic player? Right? What's going on with these people? What's driving them? What is their chess like? And it's been an incredible journey, and it's given me insight as a teacher into what kind of player it is that's now coming up. And when you think about it, it's really, imagine millions of people of incredible variety of natural degrees of talent across the world, millions trying their hand at chess, some of them climbing their way to the top, either through hard work, talent, or both. And one of the things as a coach, and then also helping with this site, is it gives me some insight into the habits and mindsets of somebody who is coming up. So if you want more of this, you have a video series like Jamil breaks 1600, 1700, 1800. He just broke 1950, which allowed him to graduate. So if he ever breaks 2000 ChessCom, I will do a video about him in a little bit more detail. In any case, here's my little rant about Jamil. Jamil has yet to play an over-the-board game. And at this point, the excuses have turned, it's just farcical, completely farcical, right? And I have been lax on it as a coach. And here's the thing that I want to stress about people watching this. I can't stress this enough, even though it's to my disadvantage to say it. It is much better for your improvement if you follow the Chess Dojo training program than if you have me as a coach. Why? Because you have me as a coach, we're going to meet, let's say we meet once a week. Let's say we meet twice a week, even more. What's going to happen is, if I'm going to tell you to do some things, and you might do them or you might not do them. The program will hold you accountable to what actually needs to get done. I'm going to say, go over your games, and you'll be like, I'll show you some games, Kraai. I'll show you some games, and we'll work it out together maybe. No, no, boss. You need to figure it out on your own and submit it to the database in clear words. And if you want to then show it to a coach, fine. But what's been in my experience as a coach for years is that people who then have a coach won't do the work because they're anticipating the lesson to kind of answer their questions, right? They played a game, we're going to talk about it, they have some premonitions of maybe what might be the truth, but they haven't dug down into what the truth is. Okay, let me stress again though, the real thing that's going on with Jamil too is the dude's not playing any real games. And why? And I think the reason I want to drill down on this a little bit is I'm sure millions of people are like this. They haven't understood that they probably maybe have understood, but it's really difficult. And I'm going to say a little bit more. But they haven't really understood that in order to make progress, they must play longer games where they're really sweating it, where it's competitive, where they have somebody trying to hurt them, the whole scene, to get system 2 activated. And one of the reasons is, I'm sure it's for Jamil, it's just like a new environment. So one thing I've talked about before is as a way to relax, I'll play Settlers of Catan online. I cannot imagine setting up that stupid game with the little plastic pieces at this point. I can't imagine it. So now you look at a guy like Jamil and millions of other players like them, and they're like, boss, a clock that I got to hit, and then the pieces I got to move. No, I'm used to my little game here. And then also, they're used to the fast time controls that happen when you play online. The longest Jamil goes is 30, and we're going to look at one of Jamil's games here as a 30-minute game, right? So I want to say, I'm yelling at Jamil here, and I'm hoping he gets his act together, but I'm doing so because I'm pretty sure that there are millions of people out there like Jamil, and that many of them are in our Dojo training program. So what am I trying to say? It's better for you to follow the training program Do what it says to do. That will give you sure progress than lessons with me. Now, that said, I'm a great coach. Lots of laughs. And Jamil is making progress still. Now, I do think he's going to have to play some real games for real progress to set in, but he has been making progress. He's up to 1950 now. We're going to look at the game in which he achieved it. Early on in my working with Jamil, he insisted, like they do, that he wanted to really go deep dives on openings. So we did it. And this has been going on, I think, since he was like 1300. By this, I mean the openings have stayed static. So we did some initial opening work. And for example, with this one, what we're going to see is Jamil had a general sense of how the development in the Smith-Morra goes. Served him fine. The openings have never actually been an issue in any of these games that we were looking at. And one of the things that he has done correctly is he stopped badgering me about the openings. And, you know, when we go over it, when he plays a game like this, we study it and we look at the opening. So yes, there's opening knowledge that starts happening, but it's not in the level of like Jamil goes off and studies some opening theory. Okay, so here we go. Pop, 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 pop. I played this when I was a kid. Beautiful. This is a very standard position, and E5 is kind of thought to be the main move. To my mind, there's all kinds of ways to meet the Smith-Morra, but to my mind, this is what I would do if I was black. I turned on the computer today just to see what it thought. Back in the day, I know that the computer thought these were a little bit better for black. Now Stockfish says that those moves are about equal. But also Stockfish wants the insane bishop b5. It's completely inhuman to me because black's concession on the last move was to open this bad boy up, and then we're immediately leaving that diagonal. It's hard. It's hard for a boomer GM to take it. Okay. So, in any case, queen c7 happened. And now bishop f4. Bishop g5 is my preference, but okay. And now again, maybe e5. So here's an interesting moment in terms of the opening. So my sensibility here is that white has very nice compensation after rook c1, let's say castles, bishop b3, and our intention is just to play knight d5 next. So for example here, and it's less about winning the pawn and more like when we take here, the bishop will get freed, right? And everybody's happy. And it's not like white's winning, but white just has a nice position. Okay, so that I feel is like a good example of opening knowledge, because it's not like some forced variation, it's just an idea, this knight d5 thing. Then also, when he played in the game, I think it's playable, but usually it's not what we want to do. For one, we're opening up the bishop on e7. Okay, so, by the way, there was also a fascinating position where maybe this could happen, right? And then we get this really hard to evaluate position here. Very difficult for me to understand. But in particular, black goes rook c8 next, and I don't know how we get the pawn back or how we get compensation for the pawn. Me and Jamil looked at a little bit at that today. So, pop. Now, this guy that Jamil's playing, I think it's interesting to think about, like, well, what makes this guy to be like over 1950 and either not higher than that or not lower than that? And for one, the guy was thinking. So a lot of times when we see Jamil's games, I see Jamil's games, people at the 1900 level, they're not thinking. They might be really, really impressive in whatever way you might want to call them impressive, but they're not thinking. This dude was thinking. So that was good on him. But here is an instructive mistake with bishop d3. Excuse me, queen c6. It's a mistake because you are going to get smacked with rook c1. And that's what Jamil should have played. But he got fascinated by this trick, knight b5. Very hard to evaluate. By the way, the critical position would be, I think, queen a5, because white would like to play knight e4 at some point, and this prevents knight e4. So this position, very interesting, and I didn't know quite how to play it from white when I was looking at the game. So hard to evaluate. Queen c6, though, definitely a mistake. And then this is interesting. This all seems forced. And then this was a good move from his opponent. Queen e4, bishop d4. And now black just lost their mind. Szabo Gabor lost his mind and played b5. No one understands. No one understands. I felt black might even be better after b6. And the point is that this is a little bit hard to deal with after rook b7. I couldn't find anything for white anyway. Important to see that in this position, if black takes first, then it's not nearly as good for black because our bishop can come back hitting this. And the difference, of course, is our knight is protected because the bishop was able to drop back when the exchange happened. So b5, and then it's just over. Then it's just over. Game over. It's that easy. And that's how Jamil became a 1950, my friends. 1950, which is precisely the rating that Jamil needed to graduate. So one of the things I'll say about Jamil's further quest here is I can imagine Jamil making 2000 in the relatively near future. And at what point will Jamil hit some kind of plateau? If you watch the previous videos I've done, you can see like the rating progress since we started has gone up. You know, I think it was like 1100 or something like that when we started. Has gone up on a pretty steady trajectory. When at least viewed from a distance, it seems like there hasn't been any plateaus. You know, obviously there's ups and downs in the daily life, but from a distance, it just looks like it's going on forever. And so, Jamil's next quest is pretty obvious. Dude's got to play some real games, and it's got to get more involved in the training program, doing things like the rook endgame progression with people, endgame sparring with people, right? And then obviously once he plays the games, to do the analysis work. But all of that hasn't been happening, right? And I think, I'm going to just say it again, I think it has everything to do with where other people are as well, where it's just very difficult for them to imagine doing over-the-board chess because they're just used to playing online now. Okay, my friends, I'm going to end it there. Thank you for being part of this graduate show. I think David might come on in a little bit. Let me see if there's this Discord message is waiting for me. All right. David is arguing to me about the terms half a tempo and tempo. It's just inconceivable. Inconceivable. What's the man's going on? The way the man has lost his mind. Okay. Pepper Chess, thank you for being here. We had 5. Last week, we had 1 graduate. Here we had 5, and I think that's more our norm. Hopefully, you know, as the dojo grows, it'll be more than that. But that's that's nice, dude. That's 5. And actually, one quick thing I can tell you, this is kind of remarkable, is when we started, we didn't know what the points per box was going to be. Like, how many points per box would we be averaging? And at the moment, we are averaging 4.3 points per box. Amazing, right? That's a lot of points. And average rating increase per participant, 33 points. And then we have total points gained, 53,000. That's a lot. That's a lot, my friends. Okay, so I'm out of here. I'm going to raid somebody. And unless Kostya or David write me immediately and say they want to jump in. I'm going to raid somebody. Who's it going to be, Bowers? Oh, man, those poor people at the STL Chess Club, they got problems, man. Oh, don't raid, I'm ready. Okay. So I have a feeling that's Mr. Pruess. I'm going to sign off. He's coming in. Bye, everybody.